Good morning, lovely Joe. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I think we can both agree it's been a busy and hectic week in our world, so
It
a little
has.
bit on the tired front, if we're
It
really
has.
honest.
And someone decided to let Amelia be off this week. So absolute carnage because they've left the two of us to be able to, well, within reason, do what we like. But yeah, I feel like this week is the week we needed the anchor that is Amelia. But oh well, it's just us two today and a lovely guest a little bit later on. So yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
we
And how are you otherwise? Just other than a little bit tired, are you good? Did the music pump you up a bit?
The music did pump me up. My other half said that I was very down and low on energy this morning, so he was trying to get me to woo. Didn't work. If you try it, it does work, but I was like just having absolutely none of it. I was like, no, he's literally just wooed. I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah, I
That is
forgot you could
comedy
hear me.
gold.
I know, yeah. It's a good thing I've got my noise cancelling headphones in, so you can't hear that. But yeah, so so everybody needs to woo on a Friday morning apparently, because it'll get your energy levels up. But unless you're really sour like me and refuse to do it. But no, I'm good. Do you know what? I feel a little bit of relief this week. I think that's part of it. It's like,
Sure.
which I know we'll come on to in a minute in the Insight Scoop. But yeah, how have things been for you this week?
Yes, all
Or
good.
the
I
last
think
2 weeks?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, not being weekly? We're so used to it being
Yeah.
weekly, but I quite like this 2 weekly because it's like short, sweet, and a burst of energy, even if it is only for 20 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah.
all good my end. The garden office is mostly erect. It's
Interesting
now
choice
just
of words for a Friday morning.
it's it's the right word. There's
It
no
is,
other
I
word
know.
for it. We're just still children.
Yeah.
We just need some electricity to run to it, and then I can finally be sat there and no longer look like I'm sat in a spare room, because I am sat in a spare room. But without further
Exciting.
ado, let's stop talking about my garden room and let's go
Yes.
straight to the Insight Scoop.
Just a small week for news. I honestly don't even know where to begin. So this week, funnily enough, we are going to be talking about the autumn budget, because there was just one or two little things. I mean, the main one that I think people are focusing on is the 1p reduction in a cost of a pint. I feel like that's a good place to start.
That's the good news. I'm pleased we've got that out there, and I
Yep.
think what we're about here is probably, it's not awful news. It depends where you are on the spectrum, where you're listening from. Obviously, if you're a financial planner listening, you probably know from our perspective what we're about to talk about. If you're listening from other industries, you may not know about the personal taxation side of things so well. So hopefully some of the things we're going to cover in this Insight Scoop will cover exactly what you're expecting, kind of thing. So let's start with a really simplistic one, which is that the national insurance has risen for employers from 13.8% to 15%, and it's expected that from April 2025, I should say, that that's going to raise about 25 billion annually. And we were chatting about this before the show, weren't we? Talking about how we've got clients and small business owners, you know, with employees of say 20 to 30ish, and how that's going to raise about 20-ish plus £1,000, I think, on the simplistic calculation.
Yeah, for kind of an average sized business. And I think the other sneaky bit of detail that isn't necessarily in the headline is the fact that not only have they increased the rate of it, but they've also reduced the threshold at what point that rate comes in. So it's almost like a bit of a double bubble. They've been quite sneaky with it, where they've gone, yeah, it's only a 1.2 whatever % change in increase in national insurance for employers, but we're going to halve the level at which income is paid before it's then due. So it's I feel a little bit sorry for employers, because there's going to be, luckily they've got a bit of time to plan for it. So unlike some of the other changes that came in instantly, they have given them a bit of time to prepare for it. But I think Rachel Reeves came out yesterday, didn't she? She was interviewed after the budget, saying that she kind of acknowledges the fact that it probably will affect people indirectly, in the sense of they might not get the pay rise that they're expecting because the cost of employing them has unfortunately gone up for employers. So I just hope they spend the 25 billion properly. That's the bit that I'm focusing on. It's like they're going to have to increase tax a little bit somewhere, but let's just hope they put it to good use.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's time to plan for it. It's pre-tax for a pre-profit for the business. So obviously, there's some offsetting to be done there, which is good news. But yeah, shall we move on from national insurance for business owners and go to capital gains tax?
Capital gains tax. That was probably one of the bigger announcements, wasn't it? So they have adjusted it ever so slightly, where previously there was 2 different rates of capital gains tax, depending on whether it was a property asset or whether it was a share or something else, stocks and shares and equities. So what they've done is immediately after the budget, which is what shocked people, it wasn't the change itself, but it was the date at which it came into effect. They brought them in line. So instead of paying 10 or 20% on capital gains, you're now paying 18 or 24%. So there was a little bit of noise about that, because it meant that all of a sudden you're paying potentially an extra 8 or 4% on the gain that afternoon. What are your thoughts on it, Tom?
Honest thought, it's not as bad as it seems. And I'm going to be the optimist in the room for once. It doesn't happen. Usually I try to be the optimist out of the two of us, I know. But on a serious note, I think we thought pre-budget that it could be as bad as going in line with income tax. We thought it could be a flat rate of a single rate of potentially 30%. So, if we actually look at what we thought could happen, it is better than what we thought could happen. So whilst it's not ideal, it is going to raise tax. Actually, it's not the worst thing in the world. The rate, I think, is still really quite reasonable considering. I know the exemption is reducing, so more people are paying it. The thing that I'm really worried about with this one is people declaring it. So remembering that some people who are basic rate taxpayers making a gain, they will have to do a self-assessment tax return where they normally don't do one. So it's about maybe educating people to do returns when they wouldn't normally do one. Is there anything else you'd like to say on capital gains tax before we move on to one more?
No, I think that's all. I completely agree, and I think it's She did say that they were going to spend a bit of money improving HMRC's systems. She did say that, so maybe that's where some of the money will be spent. That remains to be seen. But hopefully, it means that our basic rate payers will actually be able to have an easy ride when it comes to self-assessing. But yeah, no, I agree. It could have been a hell of a lot worse than it was. They could have really mucked with it, and actually, it's just a little bit. So it makes our lives easier because it means we don't have to really learn how to do it. But yeah, it just means that people a little bit less.
I think there's 2 things that we could go on to here. One is inheritance tax and one is pensions. I think both are equally as important, but in the interest of time, shall we say inheritance tax, or do you want to do pensions?
Yeah. No, let's do inheritance tax, because the pensions bit, we still need the detail. It's not going to happen until 2027, so we can talk about that later on down the line, I reckon.
Absolutely. So inheritance tax, really simplistic, from April 2026, that they're still going to have the £1 million worth of reliefs and exemptions across a married couple who have kids. But the big thing is change for business relief or business assets and agricultural relief. So up to the £1 million that you would get the relief, it actually will now apply with 50% relief and an effective rate of tax of 20% for most of the things. There is a lot of underlying stuff that we want to go into, like AMITers and business relief and agricultural. We just simply don't have the time in this show to cover it. But any specific thoughts that you wanted to say and who that really hits?
Yeah. So for me, on the one hand, I think it's possibly been maybe a little bit abused by the wealthy in the past. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because it's effectively closing or at least reducing a bit of a loophole. The bit that makes me upset is the agricultural relief, because that's going to hit the farmers. And Jesus, those poor farmers have had a really tough time in the last however many years, and they basically kick them whilst they're down, right? So I am waiting to see their reaction, because I reckon there's going to be some dirty protesting from the farmers, which could make the news, but we'll see.
One thing on them, I would say, is it will raise a really good episode of Clarkson's Farm, whether you like him or don't. it will be a good episode,
100%.
and I'm sure this will
100%.
come out next year, and we will all look forward to that. In the interest of time, we literally can't go into anything more in the budget
No.
in today's time. I'm sure there's loads of information out there. Just make sure if you are looking for information, you are using a reliable source. That's all I would say. So,
Yeah.
without further ado, let's go to Behind the Advice for an interview with Nicola. Joe.
Yeah. Hello, Nicola. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. It's good to have you on. You've gonna have had a big week like Tom and I with the budget and everything. But we're not here to talk about that necessarily, but we are here to talk about all things business, which, to be honest, given some of the changes, could be quite useful. So we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to dive straight in if that's okay. So
Perfect.
today we are talking about business strategies and how you've had a business strategist come on board and how it's been really useful for you. So can you give us just a little bit of an overview of what that looked like, how that came about, and what happened with it?
Yeah, I mean, last year I did a bit of work with a consultant because I wasn't really feeling love for my job, but I'd kind of lost a bit of my way and sense, I think is the best way to describe it. It wasn't the kind of in front of the client sort of things. It was more the background and the running the business and employing staff and processes.
Yeah.
So it kind of became quite apparent we needed somebody that was a bit more operational, a bit more strategic, somebody who could take some of the legwork of all the ideas, which are many that I had, but didn't have the time to implement. So it was really a fresh pair of eyes and to try and get me back from a bit of a burnt out period. So I thought I have to invest and put my money where my mouth is and spend a bit of time getting the business the way I wanted it. We've done a lot of work on that, but there was still so much we wanted to do, and there still is so much we want to do.
Perfect. Yeah. So I mean that sounds like something that I know that I definitely struggle with being a business owner, where you kind of spend maybe a bit too much time on the business or in the business, and it never feels like you get a good balance of it. So talk me through the process of the business strategist. How did they help? What did they do?
Well, I had to find somebody first, so I put sort of some feelers out, talked to a few people, and Emma kind of fell into my lap because her relationship with her old practice broke down. There's some changes there, and she needed to find another position. So we came up with a role that was all the things she liked doing in her current employment that she maybe wasn't getting the chance to do anymore. And we brought her in really with a kind of open book of let's see what it looks like. We're actually very similar but very different, which sounds quite unusual, but we realised we always knew we were very different. She's very process driven. I'm very kind of conceptual and chatty and like people and all that kind of thing. She will say to you she doesn't like people, but I don't necessarily believe that from her. She's very good with people. But as we got to know each other, we realised actually we do share the same sort of visions, morals, what we're looking for in the business. So it's been an excellent relationship that's developed very, very quickly, because this has only been month 7, I think we're in now. But it's been a roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster of a journey. Some of my existing staff didn't maybe take so well to the changes, so we're sort of in transition period with that. And to me, she's probably not had enough time to realise what we're trying to do, but the early signs are good. She's very technology driven. She has a great approach to getting stuck in and in the trenches, is what she always says with her weird and wonderful sayings. But she's very good at sort of answering me back as well. I mean, I don't think I'm a difficult person to speak to, but I think sometimes when you employ staff, they don't necessarily say everything that they should. She's very open, very honest, and we have many a heated discussion, but it isn't a fallout. It's just we agree or we don't agree, but generally have agreed on most things. So she's quickly got a grasp of what it is we're trying to do. So it's been excellent.
Cool. I mean, that all sounds really positive. I guess, like you said, there's always going to be kind of elements, isn't there, of kind of maybe not all of the staff being on board or seeing the kind of vision or the way that or the kind of improvements that you're trying to make. It's kind of getting everybody on board, isn't it? So how have you found managing that? Has that been something that she's been able to help with, or has it, how's that communication kind of worked?
It's been a challenge. We've had someone retire that was going to retire next year because the change was just a little bit too much, I think.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
the problem is often people take it as a criticism of what's happened in the past, but it isn't a
Right.
criticism. It's just times are changing. You've got so much more technology at your fingertips. The job is also much bigger. It's a bit like the budget. We've got to adapt to the things that we're thrown at, aren't we? Or we'll die as a business. So for
Yeah.
me, it was very much about, I felt like a busy fool. I felt like there was a lot of things I was taking on that I shouldn't be taking on. So it was just
Yeah.
somebody to actually validate that and sort of bring the processes in place, and we'll regroup and rehire people who have maybe got the same mindset that we do, that they're kind of open to that changes and thinking on their feet a bit more. So having that self-led kind of culture within the team, I think, is really important.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot of kind of synergy, isn't there, between having a business strategist come in, being that kind of critical thinker and critical friend, and it's very similar to what we do as financial planners, isn't it, for our clients? And so it's being able to sometimes being on the receiving end of it, and you can go, actually, now I appreciate having that kind of independent third party that's still technically, you know, in the kind of close knit circle. How have you found kind of I know we've said obviously about the team kind of struggling and there's been a bit of adaptation and maybe people not reacting the way you wanted to, but from a kind of pure business perspective, have you found that it's impacted the day-to-day either positively or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, it is impacting. It's still taking effect. It's
Yeah.
a journey rather than an immediate solution. But we've introduced some kind of ways of communicating with our clients that are a bit more tech savvy. We've had really good feedback from clients. Diary management is something we focused on because I just felt like I was completely burnt out trying to meet all my commitments. So I'm starting to feel the impact of that. And I'm also trying to be a bit more selfish in my business and say, you know, it's not just about the clients, it's about me as well. If I'm at my best and I'm feeling top of my game, then it's going to be a beneficial for them. Whereas if I'm feeling tired and burnt out, and you can't rest on your laurels, you've always got to be the best version of yourself when you're in front of your clients. That can be a challenge if other things are going wrong in your life. So she's been a really good confidant. I see her as an integral part of the business. I see it as, it's not just about an employee-employer relationship. I see it more as a partnership going forward, and she will be remunerated for that when we get to the point where the business is in that more stable position. Because like I said, it was a financial investment, but I think it's an investment that will reap returns as we go forward.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds amazing. It sounds like something that I need, to be honest. So yeah, it's so in that then, obviously, you know, I'm another business owner, financial planner like yourself. What advice would you give people like me that are maybe struggling with some of the stuff that you were struggling with, that are maybe thinking about, do they get a life coach? Do they get a business coach? Do they get a business strategist? What advice would you give them?
I think you need to pause and do a lot of self-reflection and actually work out what it is that's not working quite the way you want it to, and be quite critical of yourself. My probably fault is I'm too critical of myself. You have to be a bit kind to yourself as well. So don't focus on the negatives. But if you don't take that time out to breathe, you're never actually going to make any changes. And I wouldn't have even thought of doing this a few years ago, but it was I did a master's and there was a lot of self-reflective work in there. So you kind of learn a lot about yourself, and it's also trying to find somebody who's got skills that you don't have, that are not naturally your skill set. So there's absolutely no point in working with somebody who is a clone of yourself. You need to have somebody who has the confidence to speak out, who has the drive and ambition and the characteristics to work with you. But you also enjoy their company. I think it's really important. There's no point in spending a lot of time with somebody that you don't actually enjoy being with, and there's a conflict. You need to have that rapport and relationship to move forward. So it might be just integral steps at that point. You can't do everything overnight. You sometimes can't afford to do anything. I mean, I'm 20 years in the profession and sort of 14 years in my own business now. So I think there are cycles in the business where I feel like if we don't do something now, we're not going to continue to grow. And growth can be different. I don't just mean monetary growth. I mean working with the right people, feeling fulfilled personally, feeling that you're offering the best impact to them.
Yeah. I think, like you say, it's that it's that self-awareness piece, isn't it, of being able to kind of take that step back and realize your skill set and what you're good at and maybe what you're not good at. And then, so how did you find Emma? Was it a kind of, you put an advert out there, or was it, like you say, just because of the personality thing? Did the personality friendship bit start first, and then it kind of molded and evolved into the business strategy side?
No, I just went out and spoke to people that I kind of knew through LinkedIn or connections that did a similar role, and she was one of them. So I was trying to work out the characteristics of the type of person I was looking for, and I was approaching it more than just a job description. And as I say, it was a bit of serendipity. The timing was right. It came in, things changed the place she was at, and it resulted that she was going to get made redundant. So it was just, I think the power of networks and LinkedIn and all that is really important, because you never know when circumstances change or when you need something else. So I would encourage everyone, like next generation planners, it's I think sometimes we're fearful of networking with other planners, other advisors, but actually that's where you can get a lot of richness and learning from.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Well, we're unfortunately going to have to leave it there for today, but I mean, that all sounds amazing, and I hope that, like you say, so 7 months in, hopefully in another 7 months' time, there'll be even more rewards for it, and it'll be processing even better. So I think we're going to bring Tom back in, because that's us for the week, unfortunately.
Yeah, what an amazing interview, and what a lovely guest to have on the show today. So thank you so much for your insights, your knowledge, your thoughts. And I know it was short and sweet, but you should always leave wanting more, which we certainly did. And really, for us, I think it's just to say, have a fantastic weekend and week, and we shall see you all in another 2 weeks' time for another NGP Buzz. I don't know if I like NGP. I think Next Gen Partners sounds better.
Either way, it's a buzz.
Either way.
We can do some more wooing in a couple of weeks.
Wooing and buzzing.
Wooing and buzzing.
Have a great one.